Angels Care Home Health, serving Hayes and the surrounding areas, is a Medicare-certified home health agency providing quality skilled nursing and restorative therapy services to patients in their homes.
I love the nurses that come and see me.
Angels Care is there to help 24 hours a day, and all services are covered 100% by Medicare for patients who are eligible.
Since I learned about Angel Care, I would recommend them to anybody.
Angels Care Home Health. We serve patients.
Eagle Community Television presents Community Connection with your host, Mike Cooper.
Hello and welcome again to Community Connection from Eagle Community Television. Thanks for watching. Thanks as always to the producer and editor of our series, Jeff Durall, and thanks to camera work from Brandon Cooley on camera 2. We are at the K-State Agricultural Research Center Auditorium on the 183 bypass in Hayes with PhD professor and research weed scientist at K-State Ag Research Center in Hayes, Phil Stahlman, who spent 45 years in the area, 42 of that with K-State Research, and Phil retiring at the end of February with a special reception that's coming here at the Agricultural Research Center Friday from 2 to 4 in the afternoon, open to the public. All are welcome to attend that event. Well, let's begin at the beginning, Phil. That farm background took place in northwest Oklahoma, huh?
It did. I grew up in a little town of Gage, southwest of Woodward, Oklahoma. Small grains and dairy farm, and so agriculture has always been in my blood.
What about the transition from the family farm? What was the next step then?
Well, our family farm wasn't large enough for me to go back to the farm, so I knew that I had to get out and try to make it on my own, and I didn't really have any idea what I wanted to do other than it needed to be agriculture. But late in my senior year of my BS program, I took a weed control course, and it really interested me, and I decided that this is something I wanted to pursue, so I went on to graduate school, and I've been in it ever since.
In those early days, Phil, in the weed program that you were in at the university, what was the emphasis there?
Well, at that time, herbicides weren't exactly new, but they really hadn't become an integral part of the farming systems as they are today. Mm-hmm. And so it was a little bit of an emerging science, if you will, where farmers could use herbicides to control weeds in their crops and increase the efficiency of production and things of that nature. And it was just a very intriguing area to me.
Well, you moved to a master's degree at North Dakota State and then went into the University of Wyoming for that PhD. Yep. So why isn't it Dr. Phil Stahlman then?
Well, technically it is, but you know, I reserve the doctor for within my discipline. I don't want people to be confused that I'm a medical doctor.
No relationship whatsoever, right?
No,
Phil?
no, none whatsoever.
Well, your primary focus, I understand it, is applied research. What is that to the layman, Phil?
Well, to the layman, that would be taking weed control practices and tactics, if you will, that the grower can take and implement directly in his farming operations. That differs a little bit from the more basic aspects of weed science, where that would be more the study of the biology of weeds, for example, learning more about their life cycles and things of that nature. Now, we do some of that, but you're right, our emphasis has been on what the farmers can take and immediately apply in their operations.
So it's really a practical application.
It is, yes, very much so.
Well, now, when you arrived at the Ag Research Center, 42 years now with K-State, what was it like? What was the emphasis? What was the whole setup here?
As I think back about that in my very early years here, you know, as a new scientist, you kind of have to find something that you can call your own and make your own mark on. And at that time, we really did not have very good herbicidal weed control in winter wheat, for example. Mm-hmm. And there was a need for winter annual grass control in winter wheat. And so kind of by accident, I suppose, I became active in that area and had some success there. And so the first part of my career was, I was known for our research on winter annual grass control and winter wheat. Another aspect, and it was a holdover from my predecessor, was field bindweed control. We did quite a lot of work on field bindweed control in those early years, but over the years, then we spread in, or expanded, I should say, into other crops and a little more diversity.
Well, there was obviously a need that you saw in the winter wheat control. Bindweed's always been an ongoing problem, I think. Yeah,
bindweed is one of those weeds that we just try to manage to control. We don't really have much hope of getting rid of it.
You haven't really solved the problem there. And, well, there's the extra work after retirement. Then,
well,
Phil.
one thing about weed science, you have a pretty long career path.
I think because the weeds are always going to be with us.
That's right.
Well, here at the Agricultural Research Center, a part of the K-State research, of course, well known certainly in the United States, maybe worldwide, for dryland farming research and the things that have come out for it. I think that's pretty well known, I think, from people. How does the weed control aspect fit into the dryland farming operation? Well,
I think most people could appreciate the fact that weeds compete with crops. They compete for resources, and in this part of the world where we're in a semi-arid environment, that major resource is water. Certainly fertility or nutrients is important as well. So in order to maximize productivity, growers really need to manage those weeds and to eliminate those from the crop in order to get the most out of their farming practices. So weed control is, I'd be prejudiced. I would say the most important aspect, but certainly
might as well.
certainly one of the more important aspects of farming that they need to take into account and to control those weeds in order to have the best production.
When you're talking about economics, which is of course bottom line on farms, whether it's a major farm or a smaller family farm, the impact of weeds not only affect the bottom line, the dollar value, but also rob nutrients from the overall crop production, don't they?
That's very true. And if we talk in terms of very gross generalities, weeds are known to reduce crop yields by 20 to 50%. Wow. If they are not controlled. Mm-hmm. And of course, if you have a very high density of weeds, it's entirely possible to have a total crop loss as well. But even if you think about 20 or 30% yield loss due to weeds, I think you can pretty quickly start putting some figures on, economic figures on that, and realize it's a necessity.
Which guys on the farm do on a daily basis.
Absolutely they do.
Well, now how does no-till production fit into this? Because no-till is another area of farming expertise that's made some inroads in the past few years.
It certainly has, and in fact, when I first arrived here at the station, that was an emerging area of research. And the herbicide glyphosate really is what made no-till possible in much of the U.S. It's highly effective on a wide variety of weeds and the like, and so with glyphosate in conjunction with other different herbicides, we were able then to pretty much eliminate tillage from our farming operations. Mm-hmm. And by doing that, then we were able to retain more of the crop residue on the soil surface, which reduces evaporation. You trap and contain more or preserve more of the moisture that you do receive through rain and snowfall. So over the years, that has allowed us then to dramatically reduce soil erosion, but that additional moisture has also allowed growers to increase crop yields and even to practice or utilize some crops that previously would not have been possible to grow in this part of the state.
And with no-till, you're also saving energy, time, and resources, aren't you?
That's right. Yeah, it's just a very efficient and an environmentally friendly production practice.
One of the areas, Phil, that you've been working on particularly is the herbicide-resistant weeds. And tell us a little about that work.
Well, herbicide resistance isn't a new phenomena. We first became aware of, I think the first the known herbicide-resistant weed was back in 1957. But it really wasn't until about the 1980s when herbicide resistance kind of came to the forefront for us. And at that time we developed resistance to the triazine family of herbicides. Principally atrazine would be the herbicide most people might recognize. Also during that time, we mentioned our work with wheat. In the early 1980s, we had a new herbicide mode of action come to the marketplace called the ALS inhibiting herbicides. This was a rather dramatic improvement in that instead of applying pounds of a product per acre, we could apply fractions of an ounce of these products per acre. So much less herbicide loading into the environment. But what we didn't anticipate, but what we learned fairly quickly, is that these herbicides targeted a single mechanism within the plant. And those plants figured out very quickly a way to develop resistance to those herbicides. And so I think for those of us here in western Kansas, it was the latter part of the 1980s when herbicide resistance first became a significant problem for us. Then subsequent to that, in more recent years, has been resistance to glyphosate herbicide. It's the most widely used herbicide in the world. And we first discovered herbicide resistance in kochia, for example, here in Kansas, colleagues and I, back in 2007. And so glyphosate-resistant kochia has become a major problem for us, primarily in the western half of the state in the years following 2007. And now we're getting a glyphosate-resistant Palmer amaranth that is more of a problem in the south central part of the state, but is rapidly spreading throughout the state.
So much like animals, even human beings, weeds can adapt as well.
They do indeed, and we know some of the reasons why or some of the driving forces, if you will. It's an evolutionary process, and you know, as effective as herbicides have been, and as important as they have been to farmers, you know, farmers have become almost too reliant on them. And when they find something that works, they continue using it. And if you repeatedly use something without some alternative practices incorporated in there, then you can very rapidly evolve resistance in a weed population. And that's what has happened.
So your mission, if you will, Phil, is not only research and discovery, but education as well.
Absolutely, because once we understand what is happening, it is our mission, if you will, is to educate farmers and let them know that this is what has happened, and then to try to educate them and get them to implement some alternative control practices to deal with or to mitigate the resistance issue.
And that education process has been something that Phil Stahlman has taken to heart with publications, with tours, with presentations to many different groups. Dallas Peterson, who is a professor and extension weed specialist in the Department of Agronomics at Kansas State University, said this about Phil, and we found on the quote on the website. Phil has been a tremendous asset to Kansas farmers, Kansas State University, and weed science discipline as a result of the weed research he has conducted and communicated over the past 40 plus years. So said Dallas Peterson at Kansas State University in Manhattan. And indeed, we've been fortunate to know and to enjoy the work and the results, not only from the standpoint of the producers, but those of us who are consumers of food products and the impact you've made over the years.
Well, thank you.
Phil Stahlman, professor at Agricultural Research Center in Hayes, our community connection.
Angels Care Home Health, serving Hayes and the surrounding areas, is a Medicare-certified home health agency providing quality skilled nursing and restorative therapy services to patients in their homes.
My Angel Care physical therapist taught me how to do exercises safely.
Angels Care is there to help 24 hours a day, and all services are covered 100% by Medicare for patients who are eligible.
It gives us independence in our home.
Angels Care Home Health. We serve patients.